Hi folks, I'm just about to start the Battle of Gettysburg from Eric Lee Smith's 2018 design, Battle Hymn Volume 1, Gettysburg and Pea Ridge. There are two battles in this game from Compass Games, and as you can see here, I'm all set up for the 3-day Battle of Gettysburg. Now, I've long had an interest in the history of the Battle of Gettysburg. It featured in my second book, The Pursuit of Justice, which I published last year. Specifically, I focused on the experiences of 2nd Maine men who were transferred over to the 20th Maine in mid-1863. They were mutinous, they were refusing to serve, and Joshua Chamberlain treated these men with respect and dignity, and he managed to get most of them to join his ranks as his 20th Maine fought off that Confederate attack around Little Round Top. That situation and Chamberlain's treatment of those men has always been fascinating, so I've always been interested in the 2nd and the 20th Maine and Chamberlain and Little Round Top and Gettysburg more broadly. Now, as a historian, I love the map that comes with this. This is a beautiful sort of period style map. It communicates information very clearly. You've got the ridges, terrain, everything is very clear, easy to read, and it gives a really nice historical feel for the battle. Now, as far as game design goes, Eric Lee Smith has, I think, evolved this from his early design across 5 Aprils. The fundamentals will be familiar to most people. It's a chit pull mechanism, so you draw out a counter from the cup, which activates a brigade. A division. They have a movement potential. They have strength, which determines how many factors fire on the enemy, how many dice you roll effectively, and a morale value in the center, which affects various things throughout the battle. Combat is really based on rolling a number of d10 equal to the strength and hoping to secure hits. The dice roll is modified mainly by the terrain, and if you hit a target, you will either cause strength point losses, or I think they're called demoralization losses. They are permanently lost. They can be recovered during night turns. Now, this is also very interesting because this board game was co-designed with a computer game called Gettysburg: The Tide Turns. And incidentally, mid to late last year, when this was first released, actually, I bought this game. It was, I think it was only $10, so I thought I'd pick it up and test it out. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. It played very smoothly, very quickly for sort of a strategic level, operational level board game, computer game design. I got that game in first release. It was very buggy at the start, but they fixed everything up pretty quickly. So I'm interested to see how the board game compares with the computer game version. All right, I'll report back soon and let you know how it goes. Okay, just at the end of the first turn, it's around 8:15 a.m. on the 1st of July, 1863, and no real surprises here. The Union Reynolds Corps activated, reinforcements arriving from down south, and this dismounted cavalry holding the high ground on McPherson's Ridge. AP Hill's Corps beginning to arrive, and I said no surprises. The only real surprise here was that Caliph's artillery managed to score a remarkable hit. I think they needed a 1 on a D10, which they secured. Now, this is artillery firing at maximum range. It's a -5 modifier, +1 for their morale. So it's 5 minus 5 plus 1 is a 1, and they rolled a 1 to hit. Davis's brigade then needs to conduct a morale check. They failed that with a 0 modifier, and so they suffer a point of demoralization. So first success to the Union. That won't do much. This is a strong brigade, but it's a hit nonetheless, which will reduce the strength of Davis's brigade, at least until night time, when they have a chance to recover. Alright, that's the end of the first turn. Alright, just at the end of the second turn, and the Confederate advance has been slowed down here around McPherson's Ridge. Devon's brigade has been shattered in the fighting around here. They didn't suffer any strength point losses, just 4 points of demoralisation, as both Davis and Archer's brigades focused their attention on Devon's brigade. This means that Gamble's brigade, which is pulled back here, is still at full strength. They've lost the strength point marker to hold the horses. Caliph also pulled his artillery back before combat. You can see here the order of activation. So Heath's division advanced first. The reinforcements came on, Pettigrew and Brockenbrough. Davis and Archer, as I said, focused against Devon. We then had the Union combat turn, and this meant that Devon could have an attempt at approach fire, which was very successful. Yes, it's a -3 dice roll modifier, +1 for their morale, but they caused some good hits. 1 strength point loss, some demoralisation, and it was further reduced in the subsequent combat phase. Archer he's on 3 strength points, but 2 demoralisation, so he's down to 1 effective strength point. Again, I guess on the other side, the Confederates did shatter Davis. He hasn't suffered any strength losses, just demoralisation, so he may make a return in the night turn. Following the elimination of Devon, Gamble pulled back here now to sort of the edge of Seminary Ridge, and Caliph has taken up a position on the road here. Reynolds's corps isn't far behind. You can see they're probably, they may be able to make it there in one turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They can get close at least, so hopefully they can get the first activation. Gamble is just going to try to hold here and slow down the Confederates even further. I considered bringing them up to the ridge here. Maybe I could have a bit more fighting on the edge of Oak Hill. We'll see what happens anyway. That's the decision I made. And now, again, Pettigrew, Brockenbrow, and Pegram's artillery coming up from the Chambersburg Pike. All right, so that is the end of the second turn. It's just now on 9:30 a.m. It's now the end of the third turn. It's around 10:45 a.m. and you can see by the order of activations, Heath's division was last, and they didn't get an opportunity to move up on Seminary Ridge before Reynolds's men, Cutler and the Iron Brigade, could arrive. As a result, Gamble's brigade, dismounted cavalry brigade, shifted around to the north around here to further slow down the Confederates. Caliph kept his artillery on the ridge here. When Heath activated very late in the turn, there was no combat. The artillery, Caliph's brigade, had a single shot, which was unsuccessful. When Heath activated, he decided to shift Archer and Davis around to confront Caliph's artillery and focus more on that eastern drive, whilst Pettigrew and Brockenbrow brought up the rear. And in fact, I meant to place an approach fire marker on Pettigrew, which they will be subject to, I think, in the next turn. So, Reynolds' corps has arrived and moved up onto Seminary Ridge before the Confederates can get there. Buford's division has been successful in slowing down the Confederates, and you can see behind the line more of Reynolds' corps and Howard's corps, I think that is, moving off in the distance. Yeah, Howard's 11th Corps. Just double checking that. So yeah, I guess next turn we've got Pender's division. They'll be arriving along the same road. And we're kind of set for fighting along Seminary Ridge. Caliph doesn't want to hang around here. He's only got one strength point. Sure, yes. Again, next turn, it will really come down to order of activations to see what's going to happen around here. Very interesting developments along that ridge. Okay, we're just at the end of the fourth turn. It is right on midday on the 1st of July, 1863, and well, you can see the situation here, but I guess the big news is that Buford's division of Pleasanton's cavalry corps, effectively under Reynolds' command, has been shattered. You see them here in the shattered Union units box. The good news is this is mostly due to demoralisation. So Devon's still at full strength. Gamble only lost one strength point, and Caliph also due to demoralisation. So hopefully they'll be able to return in the night turn with some recovered strength. They did very well to hold back the Confederates, or to slow them down at least, and buy time for Reynolds' infantry to move up. You can see in this turn, Cutler moved along further to north. The Iron Brigade moved into the Seminary, into a good defensive position. They're hard to hit in that area. And you can see the rest of Reynolds' infantry has moved up on Seminary Ridge. That's about as far as they could get with their movement for that turn. Now, the Confederates, on the other hand, are pushing further to the north, just on the edge of Oak Hill, around this area, driving on Gettysburg. Brockenbrow's brigade has suffered. They're down to one strength point. Pettigrew did pretty well in combat. They surrounded Gamble's, I think it was here, Gamble's brigade. Pettigrew only suffered the one demoralisation point, so they're at strength 7. And Davis and Archer weren't involved in combat that turn. They just moved up, harassing the Union. And behind the line, Pender's division of Hill's Corps is also advancing. And you can see here, they're moving along this road. So again, it will really come down to who has the first activation chit of the next turn, the 5th turn. This is the order for this turn. So you can see Heath moved first, managed to surround Gamble's brigade. Howard moving his reinforcements up. You can see them here on Cemetery Ridge in the rear. And by that stage, the cavalry was surrounded, couldn't do much. Pender moving up, and the 2 combat chits, which, eliminated the last of Buford's men. So that is the situation. As I said, it's just on midday. Fighting taking place between Oak Hill and Seminary Ridge, with more to come in the next turn. It's the end of the 5th turn now, so it's around 1:15 p.m, and the Confederates are really struggling to get their offensive rolling forward. Well, you can just see the order of activations over here. I had the US combat turn first, nothing really happened. Some artillery fire, but that was about it. Howard's Corps moving up behind the lines. They were initially going to shift around to the north here, around Oak Hill area, but you can see Reynolds' Corps has moved in front of them. Pender's division were initially going to move towards sort of the southern side of Seminary Ridge, but circumstances have changed thereafter, because Reynolds' Corps activated immediately afterwards, and they've shifted around to the north. You can see here the Iron Brigade in the woods over here, and they've got a pretty secure position along Seminary Ridge. So secure, in fact, that the Iron Brigade came toe-to-toe with Davis's brigade, and Davis certainly learnt about the power of that Iron Brigade superior morale. Just positive dice roll modifiers to morale and fire and so forth. And the Iron Brigade shattered Davis's Confederate brigade of Hill's Corps. In response, so more, I guess, Confederate artillery arriving. Heath had the last activation, and he moved Brockenbrow and Pettigrew around to the left here to focus on Cutler's full strength brigade, but out in the open. And there hasn't been a combat activation counter drawn since that happened. It was the last activation, but Heath is certainly hoping that they can do something. Archer has pulled back. He's down to 1 strength point, keeping the Confederate artillery on McPherson's ridge, but it's not looking good. These units are very much, these 3 units of Heath's division are quite reduced and demoralised. Really, we're hoping that Rhodes's division, which will start coming in around Oak Hill area from the next turn, can change the circumstances here. Because at the moment, the Union are holding very strong along Seminary Ridge. They have the high ground in good defensive terrain and superior strength and morale. And there's not much that the Confederates can do for the time being. But things are about to change. We'll see how that all unfolds. All right, here we are at the end of the 6th turn. It is around 2:30 p.m. now. Rose's division has charged onto the map. You can see them around this area here. Ramseur's brigade, which you can't see on the map, tried to charge into this lone Union artillery. Who's that? I don't know who that is. Osborne's battery, I guess. Tried to charge into it to kind of clear the way forward for the rest of the brigade. Unfortunately, before they could get their combat activation, Reynolds's corps activated, and you had the Iron Brigade and Cutlass Brigade shifting over to support that artillery. I guess this is a really important lesson in not charging straight in, but instead, as they've done around here, to send in the entire division together as a strong force to, I guess in a sense, break down that defensive fire and I guess disperse the defensive fire. So what happened over here is Ramseur's brigade was alone with the artillery, but before they could activate for combat, which happened very late in the turn, the Iron Brigade, Cutler moved in. This forced Ramseur to split his fire. He did cause some hits. You can see 2 demoralisation there. The Iron Brigade's down to 3 demoralisation, so they're firing less effectively, but they caused a heap of hits on Ramseur's brigade, and whilst they passed their morale check, they suffered demoralisation points higher than their strength, which forced them to shatter. So they may make a return, but with only strength 4, they will shatter very easily before, again, no strength point losses, but demoralised for the time being. And the rest of Rhodes's division coming on quite shortly. Some effective artillery fire by the Confederates here. I think it was before before Pender's division moved up. I think it was McIntosh who got some good fire, here against Baxter's brigade and caused 3 demoralisation points of loss. That was from earlier. That's artillery. So now that Rhodes has arrived, Pender has joined the fight, and again, they're focusing, as they did historically, on this sort of northern point of the Union line. I guess the Union is lucky to have Howard's men in this area. This is, of course, Howard's artillery. It's very interesting how it's developing. It's moving very quick. I'll say this, the game moves very quickly. It is easy to move, to activate. The rules are very clear. The map, whilst it looks amazing, has all these charts printed all around it that makes things very clear. So artillery range chart, you don't have to remember this kind of thing. For the first few turns, I was thinking, what happens when I do a morale check? It's all printed right in front of me right here. So we do have these charts that summarises all these things. You can just sort of glance over to the side of the board. The turns happen quite quickly. Again, this is still the first day. It's still just around 2:30, so there's a lot more units to come on the board. You can see the reinforcement track along here. Things will get much busier by day 2, and indeed by the end of this day. But for now, the turns play through very quickly. It is a game that is in a system that is very quick to grasp and to understand, and to get your head around. So that's into the 6th turn. We're heading into turn 7 around 2:30. We'll have Early's division of Ewell's Corps arriving from, I think they head in over here, which will even further threaten this position here, and so that balance is shifting now towards the Union. They just need to be more careful. I need to be more careful with my attacks. That approach fire bonus, which the Union will get here, yes, it has a -3 dice roll modifier, but you can see here these guys are on high ground, +1 morale, and it can be quite effective if you're not careful when you're advancing, as was the case over here. All right, more to come shortly. It's now the end of turn 7, and as you can probably see here, Rhodes is launching a more coordinated attack on the Union lines, focusing on the weaker points of those lines, bringing in his units, his brigades in strength. Further around to the west, Pender's division is also coordinating quite well, forcing the Union back. The Union troops are mainly withdrawing before combat. The Confederate combat chit was drawn quite early. They've been unlucky with their artillery this turn. I don't think they've caused any disorder whatsoever. Despite having quite a number of artillery pieces out and set up, they've just been really unlucky with their rolling. And so the Union's withdrawing, the Confederates are pushing hard. Early's division of Ewell's Corps has now arrived from out in the northeast. And you can see Howard's men have arrived. They're taking up a position on the right of Gettysburg, but as I said, they are pulling back because Early could quite easily hit them here on the right. It is now, just to give you a sense of time, it is now around 3:45 p.m. The Union still hold Seminary Ridge, but again, you can see they've started to pull back from there. They opted to withdraw from that combat. I mean, they've protected their flanks quite well. The movement of the Iron Brigade and Cutler here, this is part of Reynolds' corps to the north to just hold off Rhodes's attempt to outflank Seminary Ridge. Has been successful, and they've slowed them down. But they are withdrawing. Rhodes's division has quite some strong and powerful units. So that is the situation at the end of turn 7 at around 3:45 p.m. It's now the end of turn 8. It's about 5 p.m. and, well, this picture really speaks for itself. The Union forces are doing very well to withdraw away from combat. This is the first turn with Confederate initiative, and they used it. They moved part of Heath's division, Pender's division advanced, and then they decided to use their combat activation. Having the initiative on turns, I think 8, 9, and 10 means that they can decide when to activate their combat marker. And they did so with mixed results. Unfortunately, Rhodes's division wasn't very effective in their attacks. They suffered some demoralisation, as you can see along here. But they were more successful out around here with Pender's division really choosing their targets carefully and driving Howard's and Reynolds's corps back. So Howard's men, when they eventually activated shortly after that, they've pulled back just in front of the ridge and the hill out there in the east. Reynolds' men also beginning to pull back. The Union forces are really withdrawing from combat rather than facing those Confederate forces. At the moment, they are trying to pull back to Cemetery Ridge. Now, this is a stage where those Confederate reinforcements have really shifted the balance in favour of the South, and the Union don't want to fight. You can see around the top here, Early's men trying to move up Bennis Hill and around Rock Creek to around the east of Culp's Hill. We do have Slocum's men. I think this is Slocum. Slocum's 12th Corps arriving from the east. I guess order of activation is again really important. I don't think Early's men can get too far, but Slocum's men are going to have to sort of divert out to the east there. Reynolds's men may have to stretch out to the south because, there's not much left of their defences on Seminary Ridge. A bit of an open space here near Emmitsburg Road. So, Confederates pushing through the town. The penalty for firing in the town is -1 to the attacker coming out of that town. So the Union doesn't want to sit around there. I should say that in the small combat circumstances that they have faced, they've picked their defensive terrain really well and are causing casualties. You can see, in fact, here's the Confederate shattered units. They're Brockenbrow down to 1, Lane on 5. Down to 2, I should say, down to 4. Davis really got hit hard. And compare this with the Union with a lot of demoralisation, but not too many losses. So I think the Union has done well to withdraw and minimise their casualties. Yes, they've lost that ground, but they don't have many strength losses. 2 strength losses there, and that's actually about it. They've done really well to minimise their strength losses, largely due to, ineffective. Well, Confederate artillery has been very ineffective over the last turn or two, but they've been unlucky in combat as well. All right, so that's the end of turn 8. We're just on 5 p.m. 3 more turns before it's night time. Okay, it's the end of the 9th turn, so it's now on 6:15 p.m. We're about to go into 10:10, which is the second last turn for the day. And Confederates are continually sort of foiled by Union activations. The Union had Reynolds's Corps and Slocum's Corps and their combat chit drawn very early, which basically enabled them to pull back away from Rhodes's division. It was only really Pender. So after they withdrew, Pender then activated, and he managed to get a couple of attacks in against, I think, Howard's Corps, which was lucky to shatter one of Howard's brigades. You can see quite a few, and one of Reynolds's brigades over there as well. So they got a bit lucky, but I think the Union are also getting very lucky with their activations, and they're just pulling away from combat. So Reynolds's men now have withdrawn along the Emmitsburg Road, Cemetery Ridge. Confederate artillery moving up into Seminary Ridge. Heath's men behind the lines are just exhausted. They just need to recover. We do have Anderson's division coming in now as reinforcements, and we're about to get Johnson's division moving in from, where do they come from? The same area, down in the northwest. So, and again, more of Slocum's men arriving from out the east as well, which is really protected Culp's Hill. Early was a little too concerned about crossing that river. He could have crossed. Maybe he should have. He does have superior morale, but these are only sort of 4-strength units. Maybe next turn, maybe in this coming turn. It's getting dark now, 6:15 p.m. I guess this is the question: do they drive up Culp's Hill or settle in for the evening? They have pushed the Union back. They have they've kicked them out of Gettysburg. Yes. I guess, do we continue driving for the next turn or two? We shall see. I'll make that decision when I get to it in the coming turns. So it is now the end of the 9th turn, coming to the 10th turn, second last turn for the day. It is 6:15 p.m. All right, it's the end of the 10th turn, so it's around 7:30 p.m. And this is a very busy turn around Culp's Hill, Cemetery Hill. I did make an attempt by the Confederates to seize the hill. Early's division drove up Culp's Hill. There was a lot of back and forth combat against Howard's and Slocum's Corps, but I think it's fair to say the Union defenders had the upper hand there. Howard did lose a shattered brigade. You see there, Ames's brigade in the top right, but Early lost 2 brigades shattered with some strength point losses, And 3rd Brigade only just made it out with 5 demoralisation point losses. And then Rose's division made a really focused attack against some of Howard's men here. They did shatter one of Howard's men, but they lost some strength points themselves, 1 strength point, some demoralisation, and they had to call off their attack. So with 1 turn to go, Union defences around here are pretty strong. I mean, Rose's division is suffering from demoralisation. They've only got 2 effective strength, 1 effective strength, 5 minus 3, 2 effective strength. 1 pretty strong here is just Daniel's brigade. They're still full strength. But Early's division, as you saw, down to 1. This is a strength 3. They can't really do much else around this area. Reinforcements coming in, Anderson's division and Johnson's division down here, but they're not going to be doing anything for the rest of this turn. So with 1 turn to go, it'll just be sort of pulling back those Confederate attackers and preparing for the second day, because there's nothing else they can really do over this next hour. I'll report back on that in just a moment. Okay, so here's the situation at the end of the first day. It's in the 11th turn, the end of the 7:30 p.m. turn. The failures of those Confederate attacks on the 10th turn meant that they couldn't do much. They were really reduced. So they've just pulled back. You can see around here, this is Anderson's division, moving between Seminary and McPherson's Ridge. They're shifting out to the right of the line. Johnson's division moving up. I'm not sure where they'll go yet. But a lot of the rest of these Confederates are greatly reduced. You can see here, again, Pettigrew started with 8, down to 7, but with 6 demoralisations. They're on 1 strength. Archer, 3 minus 2, they're down to 1 strength. This is Pender's division, started with 4, they're down to 3. Started with 4, they're down to 1, so 4 minus their demoralisation. Confederate artillery got 4 batteries up here. They did no damage whatsoever. It's interesting, as you can see, Anderson's division heading out here. We now have Sickles's corps. This is the 3rd Corps moving up the Emmitsburg Road towards those positions. So that's the end of the first turn. I think a couple of things to take from this. The Union defended very well. They chose their defensive positions, particularly along Cemetery Ridge, very effectively, which just blunted those Confederate attacks, needing 3 or less to hit in the woods, for example. And they chose those woods to defend on high ground. The Confederates went through the valley. What else? And they withdrew along this area. They got lucky with activations around here. It could have been quite painful had the Confederates drawn their combat chit at the right time. As it was, Reynolds's movement chit was drawn, and they sent the Iron Brigade and Cutler's Brigade out there to help blunt Rhodes's advance. I haven't done the victory point check yet. I will do that now, and I'll pause the video and then I'll report back in just a moment. So I've just worked out the victory point schedule for the end of the day. So this is the Union losses. This is the points the Confederates get. The Union have lost 3 strength points worth of infantry. That's really not much. And they've lost 2 strength points of artillery or cavalry for a total of 28 points. That's actual lost strength points. They've got a lot of shattered units. They've got 9 cavalry and artillery for a total of 36 points, and 17 shattered infantry for a total of 34 points. They then have on board 19 infantry demoralised and 2 other artillery points demoralised for a total, if I've added this up right, of 121 points. Okay. Now, looking at the Confederates, they have lost 12 points. They've lost no artillery or cavalry. They've lost 12 points of infantry for 48 points. They have had shattered quite a few large units. Now, the problem here is that is 26 times 2 for 52 points. They've then had demoralised on the board at the moment 24 points of infantry and 3 points of mainly artillery, which gives them a total of 130 points. Now, unfortunately, what this means is that by the end of the first day, when you do the victory point check for Gettysburg, it's very close. Okay, so the Unions have more victory points than the Confederates. The Unions have 130 points based on Confederate losses. The Confederates only have 121 points. This is based on Union losses. So technically, this means that's a Union victory. Yeah, so it's close. Only 9 different victory points in it, but I think it reflects the situation on the board. Rhodes' division, whilst technically still on the board, is very weak. Early's division is very weak. Pender's division is very weak. Now, on this first day, the Confederates should be surpassing Union victory points. They should be inflicting far more casualties, and just the Unions have been able to withdraw and evade that Confederate fire and pick their defensive situations very well. Based on that, this is a first day Union victory. Yeah, they dominated the defensive ground. They shaped the battle to their needs, picked that high ground, pulled away from the open ground, did really well. And the Confederates just could not pin them down. Every time Rhodes or Early or Pender tried to advance, tried to force combat, they couldn't get the combat chit when they needed it. And I think that was really decisive. Just Union ability to pull back and determine when and where combat took place. This plays really quickly. So this ended the first day. I mean, we could continue. I'm tempted to restart and reconsider Confederate approach. This is my first game. And Confederates are going to have to do something different. Hit, I guess, the Union hard in particular points. When Rhodes sent out that one brigade to attack the Union artillery, that was probably a bad idea. Early's attack here was much better. They were just outnumbered. So yeah, it plays very well. You could play, I mean, I've been taking a few breaks, but you could play the entire Battle of Gettysburg 3 days in a single day, in a single sitting. If you had like an entire Saturday spare, I'm confident you could get through the whole thing in a day. The first day of battle plays in a couple of hours. And again, this is my first playthrough, but you grasp the rules very quickly. It's a little fiddly with the kind of strength point losses. This is an 8 strength unit. They have 7 SP markers below them, meaning they're down to 7 strength points. But of those 7, 6 are demoralised, meaning they have an effective strength of 1. So it's not immediately obvious how strong a unit is. You really have to flick through the pile to see, and do a little bit of maths to see how strong they are. But I mean, once I know Pettigrew's weak, I pull him out of the lines. So yeah, a great system. Great map, clear counters, clear information, easy to follow, easy to understand, and it plays very quick. That's Eric Lee Smith's Battle Hymn, Volume 1, Gettysburg and Pea Ridge.